You're listening to Get to Know World of Warships, a podcast created by Boggzy and Synpax.
Hello and welcome back to Get to Know World of Warships. This is Borla. I'm here with my co-host Boggzy, and usually Boggzy says we have a very special episode, but the fact that I'm introducing the episode tells you that it is in fact a very, very special episode. Boggzy, would you like to tell them what our very special episode is?
Yeah, so today coming up, guys, we have something that we've been trying to find for, I don't know, I feel like we started looking for someone to talk about this subject since you really joined me, maybe, God, 20
It's been a couple months. Yeah, it's been a few months we've talked about finding somebody.
Absolutely. So we've been looking for somebody to talk about I would say the forgotten war, kind of like the... people forget that the Soviets invaded northern Manchuria against the Japanese in World War II. It was kind of called the Forgotten War. Even though it was an enormous military campaign, I think sometimes as players progress through the game, they forget about what happens from tiers 1 through 4.
Yeah, you know, when I started about 3 months ago or 4 months ago playing a Mikasa game every morning with my coffee, I've talked about that several times. One of the things that I noticed in Matchmaking Monitor is that I would see the same guys, and I would see guys who had thousands and thousands of battles in the same tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 ships. And I've always been fascinated in what interests people in sticking at those tiers, you know, why they're playing those, what's fun for them. Oftentimes, if they don't progress or they only progress a little bit, play higher tiers, why that is. And so we finally found somebody who has over 6,000 Black Swan games and an interesting story about the Black Swan and what he's doing today. Yeah. So we're going to talk about that.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to overrule you.
Yeah, go ahead.
So in a few minutes, we're going to drag him into the lair here, and we're going to pick his brain about it. So that should be a lot of fun. In the meantime, we'd like to give you guys a little update on sort of what's going on in the world of warships. And I think the biggest news is, of course, that this weekend we had COTS Internationals, where the top 3 teams from each server, North America, European Union, CIS, which is the Russian server, and the Southeast Asian server, SEA, and the top 2, the 2 finals were both teams from Asia. It was Panzer and FPM. Sorry, I always keep forgetting whether it's FMP or FML or FPM. FPM versus Panzer, and it went 3-2 in favor of Panzer. Congratulations to them. They won 15 grand American to share amongst themselves.
I couldn't help noticing that the broadcast this time was extra handsome.
It was. They had Private Penguin on, and he is a handsome young German man. Why, was there something else?
Nice deflection, Boggzy.
Thank you. I'm an actor. Did you know that?
I've heard that, and I've heard you described as dashingly handsome.
Yeah, so I was given the incredible opportunity this season in COTS Internationals of being one of the 2 talking heads, along with Chrysantos and Mr. Conway, doing pre- and post-game analysis of COTS Internationals. I was joined by Private Penguin, also known as Pingu, from the European Union. He's a he's a German community contributor. And we got to do some replay analysis on the official Wargaming Twitch stream. It was an absolute pleasure being able to do that. And then after that, I was even given the opportunity to Sunday afternoon play 2 hours on the official, play with my stream going to the official Wargaming Twitch server with the North American community managers. It was a great weekend for my Twitch stream, as well as obviously for Warships in general, as I thought COTS went really, really well this week, this season, now that Wargaming has taken over. But enough about me bragging about myself. We got some cool news coming up from the dev blog as well. Borla, why don't you tell us what's the most interesting stuff there?
Well, I know there's a ship or 2 that you're especially happy to see.
Repulse,
we also have
Repulse. They're finally making Repulse.
Oh, I expected quite the dramatic impression that would make on you. So I noticed your face on the official stream when they mentioned that. You were quite happy. We're having some changes to friendly fire. Friendly fire is no longer going to do damage to your teammates. you're still going to turn pink. You're still going to potentially get locked in co-op or training battles if you abuse it too much, but they're going to use some different mechanics for that. There's some attack aircraft changes. There's some new camos. I think the camos for the Plymouth, the Constellation, and the Yukon are another example of Wargaming's art department really knocking it out of the park.
Yeah, they carry a lot of weight, the art department. Yeah, you can see it on the dev blog now that there are, in fact, camos. There's a Canadian camo, which, fine, whatever. Good for you, Canada, for being Canadian. You're so goddamn nice, aren't you? Yeah. And then the Constellation has an Independence Day themed camo, which I believe they're also going to apply to a few other boats. I think I caught that. And then there's this funny camo called the Red Fox camo for the Plymouth, which is neither red nor fox-like. It is an orange tiger, and I can't tell whether this is Mr. Conway trolling us or if this is some sort of social experiment to see just how much cognitive dissonance a World of Warships player can tolerate before they explode. But the camos look really, really nice. I'm particularly looking forward to the HMS Repulse. It's going to be a Tier 6 British battle cruiser. It will be a battleship class, but it will function much like a battle cruiser. I'm going to say that it functions a lot like a Hood at Tier 6. So it's going to have lighter armor than most. Its armor is more akin to a cruiser, which is how traditionally battle cruisers were built. The guns, however, are Warspite guns with exceptional accuracy. So they will have 6 380s of the same type as the HMS Warspite at Tier 6, but they will be very, very accurate even at long range. And it will have long range up to 19 km, which is considerably farther than even the Warspite at Tier 6. And also a 31.5 knot speed, which at Tier 6 for a battleship is unheard of. So I've been wanting this for so long. If any of you listen to the podcast regularly have probably heard me whinge and bitch and whine about it, but I'm really excited for it. So I think that's pretty much it. We can have a more in-depth talk some other time about like the ramifications of making friendly fire not damage allies. You know, it's, well, hey, people have made the argument of, well, I mean, you can recklessly throw torpedoes now at enemies that are close to your allies and you don't have to worry about hurting them. And that's fair. You know, that's a fair thing. I think that really is only an issue in competitive more so than in randoms, but we should probably giddy up and move on to our guest. So I'm actually going to have Borla introduce him, as Borla made the call to the forums and found our guest. So take it away, man.
Yeah, so we have a thread on the forums that we had talked about some topics that we wanted to discuss. We asked the listeners for ideas. We mentioned that we were looking for someone who had a lot of experience at low tiers that would be fun to talk to. And one of the people who was recommended in that thread was TheLalaa. And so we have TheLalaa here with us today, who has quite an extensive Black Swan career in his background. Thanks for being with us today, Lala.
Hey, my pleasure.
So if I am looking at this correctly, you have over 6,000 games in the Black Swan. Is that accurate?
On the North American server, yes. It's probably between 8,000 and 9,000 if you add the Asian, European servers as well, and the Russian server.
So wait a minute. I don't think we realized this to start out with. You actually have accounts on each of the 4 main servers and played a lot of Black Game Swans across the 4 servers?
You really want to go into this? You want to know why I have my 4 I have 4 accounts, because after I had been playing for a while, I wanted to secure my name on the other servers, major servers, so that nobody else would be running around as TheLalaa. Now, my wife said, I don't think you have to worry about that. But that was the original reason I went and made my accounts on the other servers, just to secure my name.
Wow.
That is awesome.
And then I just played because I was there, and you know, had a great time with all those folks.
Well, so somewhere north of 8,000 games, maybe close to 9,000 or 10,000 games of Black Swan total.
That's amazing.
A total over the 4 servers, yes.
That's great. So just to give a little rundown, you also were extremely good in the Black Swan. Your win rate's 76%, almost a 2,300 PR, very good stats. But I guess, can you tell us what drove you to play almost 10,000 Black Swan games?
Well, I guess maybe the question may first be what drove me back to tier one. I was, tier five, tier six, and such, but I actually went back to tier one to practice this thing called Citadel hits, because I would see some people would get it. And, I needed something to where it was inexpensive for me to just practice shooting sections of a boat. And in those days, the Orland tier one was still part of the greater community. And I always went to tier one just to practice that. And such. But with the Swan, I began to notice that there were unique characteristics with the old Black Swan. And and as I began to think about my games and how I was playing and such like that, I began to realize that, the Swan would do this. Okay, the Swan would do, and I began to put together, a strategy um, that worked extremely well.
Now, eventually, I want to get to your showdown with Flamu, which I think everybody will find fascinating that your Black Swan play caught his attention. But I understand that it's been a while since you played the Black Swan. Is that right?
Uh, yes, the Black Swan was um, put into coma on the what is it? I guess it was the 18th of August, 2018. It was well and fully killed a little bit later on that year as they took away its HE and they took away its AP armor piercing shells, and they took away its rate of fire, and then they further nerfed its rate of fire, and it is no longer at all the boat that it was.
I'm sorry. Did you say they took away the AP completely, or HE?
Yes, the Black Swan was part of the um, British cruiser line.
Mm-hmm.
British cruiser line at that time, AP only, and so you started in British cruiser tier one, AP only, and such. Well, they took that away. Hang on just a second. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, because I've got my stuff up here. Change log, British Tier 1 Swans, gun reload time increased from 3 to 4 seconds. AP shells, and they talk about this. She's gained a reputation for being the best duel ship of her tier, and these changes designed to reduce her effectiveness, make her less attractive for experienced players. Wonder who they're talking about. I'm just reading right off. This is off of their wiki. And they didn't mention me by name, but anyway, yeah,
You felt personally attacked.
I feel personally attacked, folks.
Well, the Black Swan was the one boat in all of Warships that could do what it did. If all of my team, if I have a team of 12 and it's me against 9, it didn't matter. I just understood, okay, it's me against 9. We can still win this.
So this was like your carry boat at tier 1, basically. You were able to just carry an entire match if need be.
It could, yeah, if necessary. That would be fine. I didn't have but it was because I played the boat differently than other Black Swans or any other boats in tier 1.
Wow. So, okay. So you touched on it briefly. You mentioned that you moved up in the tiers a little bit, and then you came back down to 1, specifically to practice citadels, which is interesting because I had never really considered the idea of practicing such a thing. When I went up through the tiers and whatnot, I guess it just sort of happened. Like it was. People would get citadels, and I'd see it, and I'd be like, "Oh, that's what I want. I want the big black ribbon. Give me the black ribbon." But
yeah,
I just sort of was like, okay, well, it's just a function of, aiming at the right place first. That was the thing, aiming at the right place at the right angle, and then as time went on, I learned the more nuanced parts of it, like AP overmatch, for example. AP overmatch is a big deal at from tiers 6 and up, I would argue, but it just sort of, I just slogged through it and picked it up as I went, rather than really try to practice. And frankly, that might be a thing for people to consider doing if they're really struggling. It's like, dude, go to a low tier and just practice how to aim properly. But so it seems like you never went back to any of the higher tiers, right? So my question for you is, once you started practicing so much at tier 1, what was it exactly that sort of prevented you from going back up to the higher tiers? What made you stay at tier 1?
Okay. Well, in the earliest days of me kind of going back and spending time, first of all, I spent a lot of time in tier 1 co-op because I was in my earliest days of playing. I didn't feel like I was good enough to go to the randoms, and I didn't want to saddle a team with my poor play. So I spent a lot of time in co-op just because I didn't think that I was really good enough.
I think we may have just found the only considerate person in World of Warships. Borla, can we please make a record? We've done it. If nothing else ever comes out of this podcast, we found the only World of Warships player with empathy and conscientiousness
that actually cares about his teammates' experience.
Okay.
I'm so sorry to interrupt. Please continue.
No, that's fine. But you'll find some people that will not agree with you, because sometimes I won't say I'm salty, but let us just say that I put a little Tony Ciceres or something on when there's just some truly bad play.
Sure.
But to this day, I only play destroyers in co-op because to this day I still feel I don't want to saddle a team with a bad destroyer, and I am the worst destroyer player in all of the realms of warships. So I don't take my destroyers. I'm leveling 7 of them, but they're leveling in co-op because I'm just not. A team deserves better than what I can do.
I'm curious. Does that have anything to do with why you decided to stay at tier 1? Did you feel like maybe at higher tiers you would be unfairly saddling, a team, you're burdening, I guess, a team at higher tiers, or was it something else?
Okay. I moved into the Black Swan. I started to notice some differences, and I really enjoyed the gameplay, first of all. I didn't like when they sectioned off tier 1 and I couldn't see any other boats other than tier 1. I came to be very glad about that because the old Swan in any other tier, it'd be drug in a failed division or something into tier 2 or something.
Mm-hmm.
Worthless, absolutely worthless. Now I used to play it with my son-in-law, and he would play a tier 2 or whatever, and I would team up with my Orland. Even the Orland at half health and with shells at only half of their hit, I'd still do very well in my Orland. When he would drag me in a failed division, I would sometimes in near the top because the Orland is a lovely boat as well, but it was still second to the Black Swan in the tier 1 environment. But I was there mainly because I began to have fun. There was 2 reasons, almost 3 reasons for me to stay. One, you talked about seeing people with thousands of games through your matchmaker.
Yeah.
What I saw in tier 1, there was a community of players. We got to know each other. Sometimes you have to go in clans. I've never been in a clan. But tier 1 was almost its own clan. You knew the people there.
Oh,
how
so
you doing? Oh, I
interesting.
haven't seen. Oh, yeah. And I always had the names of the people above my boats. In the early days, because there were divisions of unbeatable individuals in my early days before the Black Swan, when I was still running my Orland. And I wanted to know who these people were. And I would actually warn other people on my team when I saw that division on the other team, you go there, they will kill you. And I've since become friends with one of these individuals. But in the earliest days, I knew people, at least because I had the names of people above their boats. That's just part of what I had all the time. And you got to know them. You got to talk about them, and talk with them, and such. And it is funny, we have this podcast today talking about tier 1. I have not been back to tier 1 competitive random since August 17th, 2018.
Wow.
I have the recording of my last competitive game in my Black Swan. It's on my web or on the YouTube with tons of hundreds of others.
Well, by the way, just for everybody listening, if TheLalaa is open to it, we will absolutely include a link to that last Black Swan game because I'm going to go watch it, and I encourage
It's
anybody
not very
else.
exciting. It's a little anticlimactic. I think I win, but it's not all that. But anyway, just this last Sunday, um, I'm out of church and I have a visitation to go to, and then after the visitation, I got a retirement party for somebody I got to go to, and then after that, I come home and I had an hour and a half or so to play. So I'm in one of my tier 9 boats doing a little leveling or something like that. I don't know what it is, but anyway, it's been almost 2.5 years since I've been in tier 1 competitive, and somebody there in open chat, "Hey, Lala, shouldn't you be in tier 1?" 2.5 years, 2.5 years later, and I still
That is
carry
awesome.
a reputation. But anyway,
Well,
you know,
yeah, it's funny. I had a question about just the tier one ship choice and variety and whatnot. But I
sure,
we'll get to that later. I'd actually like to ask you about like specifically the community, the little community that you said sort of you started to notice after a while. You said you would start to notice the same people and whatnot, and that's obviously the reason why Borla even wanted to do this was because he as podcast listeners will know, he plays his Mikasa game along with his coffee in the morning and farms flags. And he started to
For
notice the same things.
for now,
Yeah,
till they take that away. But go ahead.
right. Which rip earning flags from playing the game, but I hope they come up with some other way of us actually acquiring signals instead of it's just you have to pay for them. But that is what you just described. There is exactly what caught Borla's attention about the lower tier, I guess, community.
right.
You mentioned that people get into clans. You never got into a clan, but as time went on, you'd start to be familiar with folks who did the same thing that you did, and you'd start to develop a little bond with them, even if it's just recognizing, saying hi. That social circle starts to arise, even if there's no clan about it. So,
That's correct.
I
Because it was tier 1. It was only tier 1. And
yeah,
so the only people you saw were the people who made a decision not to play warships, but to play tier 1 warships.
tier one
Because
warships, right?
yeah, because otherwise you have a massive community of thousands, but this is a very small portion of that community that's only there. And when they're there, there's it's just, yeah. But in fact, that one of my videos is the video is about the conversation about the community, so that you can just read the talk over on the side,
Oh, that's great.
talking
Okay,
about all
I
sorts of
want to.
stuff.
I want to include links to these things, and we'll anything that Lala is okay with linking, we'll throw down in the description below, as we always do, below this video or below this recording, wherever you listen to it. If it's on YouTube, it'll be on the the little blurb down below the video. If you're listening to us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or Anchor or what have you, obviously it'll be in the description below. But um, can you give us a little taste of, because we want to promote your stuff as well, but we'd love to get a taste of how does that conversation go exactly when you guys are, when the tier 1 crew is literally talking about who they are and why they like what they do, and sort of socially sharing how that goes. What did you guys talk about?
What not We talked more about I guess it would be sometimes there was one particular recording I have, because I record every random battle. I don't record any of my co-ops, but and even to this day, though I haven't uploaded in maybe a year or two, but I've got tons of stuff from the upper tiers and all this kind of stuff that I think might have some interest at some time. But anyway, we would a lot of times, the talk would be, "Oh, Lala, you're in the same place," or whatever, because on the maps you only got 2 maps. I mean, 6,000 games in North America, so, and you only ever saw 2 maps, and they were
I never thought
only
about that.
yeah,
Yeah.
and they were only capture the flag. That was all. It was not the other types of map. But so
Wait,
you only saw
what?
2 maps and one battle mode.
Wait.
That was it.
Standard battle, yeah, standard
Oh,
battle.
that's
That's it.
capture the flag.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, Jesus. I
And
literally I started playing in 2018, early 2018, and all of a sudden I was like, did I miss something crucial here? Was there like you have to capture the flag and bring it back to your side? Like, oh my god.
no, but
Okay, it literally is just
in the
standard battle mode. I gotcha.
yeah, in those 2 maps, depending on where I spawned on one side or the other, I had 2 places in the north or the south or the east or the west that I would be. And they talk here about the experienced players and all this kind of stuff, but in my mind, I was the player that everyone wanted to face, because I was almost always stopped I was almost always in the same place. You could just bank on me being there. If you saw Lala and you saw him on the other, you knew where I would be, you know. And sometimes other people, Lala, I'm going to take your spot. Okay, that's fine. You do that. I'll
Oh my
find somebody
God.
else. You know, and and over time, as people started playing, a few people started playing the Swan like I did. Most people would play the Black Swan like they played the Chang'an or any of the other boats, and you can't. You know, I had one guy one time try to come up on me and engage in battle the way that I engaged in battle, but he was in another boat, and somebody else chimed in open chat. You can't la la the la la. You know,
That's
they
so
were trying to
funny.
use my tactic against me,
Sure,
but
yeah.
they were in the wrong boat. There's only one boat in all the warships that can do what that thing did, and that's why I didn't matter if suddenly it was 5 or 6 against 1. Okay, let's do this, and you know, Krakens were nothing special to me.
Hmm.
They were nothing really. I mean, that's what the Black Swan of that era was. Krakens were nothing. It was just another, you know, few flags and such, and there was nothing extraordinary about it.
Yeah, no, I've noticed some of the same conversations that you've talked about. I'm probably one of only 7 people that plays Warships that when a new line comes out or they reset the line for Research Bureau points, that they actually play the low tier boats, the 1 or 2 games, you know, to go like a
Right.
Bogsy. I'm sure when you reset lines for Research Bureau, you probably free XP up to the 5 where you play the
Yeah,
to get the
100%.
points. Yeah, and so instead, I will sit there and I will play those games. He takes 1 tier 1, 1 tier 2, you know, maybe a tier 4 or something that takes 2 games. But anyway, and I would notice I did it one morning and I dropped into 2 or 3 games at low tier, and 3 or 4 of the human players, because there's bots at those tiers, 3 or 4 of the human players dropped into 2 or 3 of those games with me. And no matter which team they were on, they were like, they had a conversation going. And sometimes it was the stuff, yeah, sometimes it's stuff like Lala is talking about where they were talking about the game. And sometimes it would be like, I remember one guy talking about, you know, how's your wife doing? Is she recovering? She feel better? Like they were talking about personal stuff in game chat and ran into each other often enough that they knew what was going on. And I always thought it was
Right.
interesting.
Yeah,
But
I had gone to Philippines for 2 weeks to do a seminar for a church over there that also had a school. And so, you know, that was just 2 solid weeks. And so I come back and I'm on there and said, "You've been gone, Lala. Where have you been?" You know, so I told them things I'd done and all that kind of stuff. But you were missed when you weren't there, and it was comfortable to see people. And you would notice some people would not show up after a while. Why? Well, they were probably running their upper tier boats and got caught up with that. But it was its own community. You know, it really was, and perhaps still is. I mean, I'm not down there. Yeah, I haven't been for a while, but
Mhm.
the community was what drew me quite a lot as well.
Well, I definitely want to ask you about the interaction you ended up having with Flamu, who's pretty notorious, especially in the upper tier, um, more competitive,
community, yeah.
community, as he's a very outspoken, very loud voice, and so I want to get to that, but I want to sort of pick your brain a little bit and find out at tier 1 or even tier 2. I'd like to know sort of what players orient themselves around in terms of like a goal, because this is where I really, my brain sort of, you know, Boggzy.exe has failed and must reboot, you know,
Excellent
because
question.
because for example, the logical progression of World of Warships to me in terms of how deep you want to get into it. The logical progression is you begin in co-op. Co-op is, you know, you begin in co-op, you're facing bots. Then you go to operations. I would say operations is the next skill or competitive based functionality, because you're playing still with other people and you're playing against bots, but the bots are programmed to have an objective, and you have to think a bit more critically and strategically rather than just facing bots. And then after that comes random battles where you're up against other players who can outwit you or outplay you or however. And then comes things like ranked, which is a progressively more and more difficult and competitive format of essentially randoms. And then finally you get clan battles, which can be as competitive or as not competitive as you want, and then you go up to something like King of the Sea, which we just got done with, which is literally the absolute most optimized the most optimized and the most creative teams coming together to try and beat another team who has the exact same ability. So, part of the way that people orient themselves as the more competitive aspect of it gets bigger is they start to find like-minded people. And that's actually how we started this podcast a year ago, was clans. It was just get to know a World of Warships clan. And we wanted to find out what brought people together in a community to try and, to play together, whether it was we like anime or we like My Little Ponies, we're bronies, or we're the only, like in the case of QCN, we're the French-Canadian clan, and there's just a variety of really interesting reasons. So I'm curious, not confused. I'm curious to know,
what's the goal of staying there?
Yes. What do you guys orient yourselves around? Like, what's
perfect question.
Okay, great.
All right? Perfect question. The World of Warships in Tier 1, where I was playing, I was willing to, I'd have spent $5-10 a month as a subscription to play the game in Tier 1. Why? Because the community of people, the ones that were there, I would call it simple ships. And really, to be frank, I did not go trolling for Flamu. It was on Reddit, and I was very much an advocate. People were complaining about carriers and the rework, and I said, why don't you come back to Tier 1 and remember why you started playing this game in the first place? Remember what you like, because it was simple ships. All you got are just your guns. There's no permutations. You don't have torpedoes. You don't have airplanes. You don't have all this. It's just you and your guns and your wits and such. And so the people that were there, I have to talk in past tense. It may still be so.
Well, that's
There are
okay.
a lot of people, but they were there because they wanted to play Warships. Most people, I need to progress, I need to do. And then after a while, Warships putting all this junk out and everything. Here's a new ship, and here's a new permutation, here's a new worthless boat, whatever. When they're what they're trying to do is they're trying to generate income off of people who keep wanting something new.
Right.
How dare you call Boggzy's Boggzy's repulse worthless?
My repulse is my baby.
Sleep.
How dare you, sir?
Apologies.
If I had feelings,
they took away my swan. All right, so I can do that. But anyway, but we were there because the simple Warships game, you and your boat against somebody else. That simple game was satisfactory. It was like two people sitting down to checkers. Well, what's checkers? It's just a satisfying and a relaxing game. Now, yes, I had very tense games and things of this nature, but by and large, I didn't have 19 things to worry about, and 17 of those things I can't do anything about. And I'll tell you another wonderful thing about Tier 1, and this, at least in my day, is that I needed to depend upon myself. In the upper tiers, I can almost call any match in the first minute based upon the behavior of the destroyers. Within 1 minute, I know whether I'm on a winning team or a losing team. I don't need matchmaker or any of that stuff. I pretty much can call it based upon the operations of destroyers.
I think you do very well at Tier 10 because we have a little friend called the Shimikaze, and we can pretty much determine whether we got a loss or we got a win in our hands based on whether or not that Shimikaze lasts 3 minutes or not. Because spoiler alert, most of the time, Shimikazes are dead in the first 3 minutes.
Well, yeah. No, I got a bevy of Tier 10 boats, and I got one I just unlocked last night. I'm not going to buy it right now because I'm cheap, so I'll wait for it.
Which one? Which one did you unlock?
Which one? Oh, I finally got Kremlin, I think.
The Krem.
But I'm not going to play. I'm only going to play I only ever play my Tier 10 boats maybe 2 times, 3 times a year, in co-op if possible, and to get whatever the prize is, whether it's steel or whatever.
The snowflake thing,
yeah. That's the only time my Tier 10 boats come out. I may have 10, 12, 15. I don't know how many I got. I don't care. But I unlock them just for that. But if I really want to play and have almost as much fun as I did in my Black Swan, I'll pull out my Kronstadt or my Agir or whatever.
He likes the Agir.
That's the magic word for Boggzy.
That's the magic word. You're my new favorite person.
Well, but I'm a cruiser guy, and hey, I love all 6 of my Tier 7 Miyokos and take those out from time to time, and I love my party boat. I got three Omahas, and
Is that the party boat?
oh, you never stop. If you stop dancing in an Omaha, you're dead.
That's
So it's
hilarious.
got to
Yeah.
be the party boat.
You know,
You know,
I just got to interject and say that for a little while there, the gentleman that I mentioned earlier, Ducky Shot, he on stream he was actually playing all of the different variants of the Omaha. He wanted to leaderboard all of the Omaha variants. I don't remember how many games you have to play to get on the leaderboard at tier 5. I think it's like maybe 20 or 30 or something like that. But he wanted to get on the leaderboard with a good win rate and a good PR. So he's just all day long he's playing these these floating citadels. It's just so funny to watch him play it. But yeah, that's I
oh,
never thought of it as the party boat because it never stops
well,
dancing.
you got to Hey, you quit dancing, you're dead, and so you never you wear your keys out for your rudder, and your left mouse or your left finger is numb from just holding the mouse button down.
Hmm.
You
Yeah,
never stop firing, you never stop dancing.
and I don't want it to be lost in all of this talk about tier 1. Obviously, you said you've never been in a clan and you don't participate like in the competitive side that we talked about with COTS or clan battles, but there's some of these mid and upper tier cruisers that you have 2000 PR in, 1900 PR in, like very respectable play in some of those boats that you just mentioned too.
But they're
So
not. They were not the old Swan. Yeah, hey, in my Kronstadt, I feel comfortable in my Kronstadt. My Kronstadt, in fact, running my old Orland captain. But the Kronstadt, if it's a 7 or 8 to 1, I'm probably not going to pull it out. But in the tier 1 Swan, 7 or 8 opponents, that'll be fine. We just have to be a little more careful.
You know,
so
I have to throw this in there, Borla. I'm so sorry. I just I'm imagining the day because you remember the specific day when they killed your baby, which is it's just brilliant to me. So I have this imagination that Wargaming took your Black Swan into a dark room for a couple of days and then brought out a goose, and they were like, "Here, comrade, here is your new Black Swan." And you're just like, "Brother, this is a goose." They're like, "No, it's swan. See, look, it has orange beak and black around the eyes. That is a Sharpie. You took a goose, you spray painted it white, and you have put black marker on its face to make it look like a swan." Okay. Well, is that how it felt? Like they took your swan and they
Well, yeah, it's not
disguised the goose up?
when they took the armor piercing away. I mean, that is how I could. I have one video that I usually my videos that I uploaded were things that came from the discussion. And one guy says, Lala, how do you, he says, 3 hits and I'm dead. And then his next statement is, how do you do that consistently? And I thought, this would be, and I have an entire hour-long video on a match that we only saw. It was 3-on-3. And for the first almost 12 minutes, we did not spot each other.
Oh my God.
3-on-3 match, tier 1. And you'll see the timer up there. The countdown timer is at 8 minutes and 30 seconds or whatever. That means 11 and a half minutes have gone by. And I have the mod that, you can see if anyone's been spotted.
Yeah.
And we had not. And so it is when I initially spot the first guy, the Orland that comes out, and we've been waiting for 11 minutes, 11, 12 minutes. And most people in tier 1, they'll sell back and forth. They'll hit people 2-3 times, and their health goes down over a period of minutes. And so they may play 10, 12 minutes, whatever, and be hit by a number of boats, and just finally, I took the first guy out in 18 seconds. He had help from a friend, but I was able to get away from that. And then his friend comes around. I take the friend out in, I don't know, 11 seconds. And these are boats that are at full health, and they go from full health to dead in between 10 and 18 seconds. And that's the way I played all the time. I did not I tried not to engage in long range battles that, you shoot this guy and he fades away. So you find some other target and you put some shells in it. None of that. When I engaged in battle, it was because I was probably 3 kilometers or less away from you. I had my nose pointed with 2/3 of my firepower, and I had armor piercing shells that were excellent. And I could simply dispatch boats. And this is why, if I used my cover correctly and carefully, and oriented my boat. Uh, it didn't matter if it was, where'd my team go? It's now 5 against 1. Okay, now let's be a little more careful here, and off we go, and dispatch, because if I was shooting at you, that must mean I am shooting at you because you're the boat that's going to kill me, because there is no other boat in your ocean but me, and because I'm nose to nose. I told one person one time, I said, if you want submarines in wargaming, watch the way I play, because I was the closest thing to a cross between a destroyer and a submarine,
Huh.
because the Swan had unique capabilities all in one boat. The Chang'an had a little more stealth, but it had no punch. Um, the Erie had massive armor. The Erie's my kryptonite in my old Black Swan. Massive armor, but it didn't have the stealth. The Swan had the stealth. It had the punch. It had the jackrabbit acceleration, and this combination, and it had the AP shells that when I engaged in battle, you needed to die, and it needed to be within 5 to 7, 10, 15 seconds at the outside, because every hit you had was going to be on me. And so I also needed that rate of fire. And depending upon how badly my boat was beaten up, I would be throwing shells every 2.3 seconds.
So anybody who's listened to the last 2 or 3 minutes has realized like the passion that you had for that boat and playing that boat is probably second only to the Kill Steel guys know when they start asking me about steak and dry aged ribeyes and
But
all this stuff. But so the point I want to get at, we've teased it a couple times. You were putting out content during that time period for the Black Swan on YouTube. You were streaming on Twitch. You were active on the forums and on Reddit, and you caught the attention of Flamu. So can you tell us the story of how you got Flamu's attention and what challenge you threw down to him?
Oh, well, I'm on Reddit. I'm not targeting him. But anyway, I'm on Reddit, and I'm advocating to just come on down to tier 1, play there. Because people were complaining about this, that, and the other, and so many of their complaints were gone. If you enjoy playing Warships, but you don't like all of the flotsam that has been jettisoned into our little game here, tier 1 is pretty much free of that, and such, and oh, it's no competitive, and that's kind of what caught Flamu's attention was, why would you go down there? There's no competitive, there's no skill involved. What is that really? Bring it. Bring it on. I'd have loved to have met Flamu and his two choice clanmates. Bring all three of them. That's fine. I knew what my boat could do. The 2 maps that I was on, I knew every part of all of those. When you see them thousands of times, and so but his issue was that there was just no ability to really, it was just all just dumb luck, with high dispersion of shells and all this, and that's part of the reason I'd get this Black Swan to point blank range, because it was horrid as far as its long range accuracy. But if I had an individual that was 2 kilometers or less, I could do pretty well, because I didn't try to hit the boat. I was always trying to hit a section of every boat that I was shooting, and I knew the citadels of all the boats, which even the citadels are gone now. I mean, it's not the same. The Swan is not the same. And then in what was it, update 8.4, they took away the citadels from all the boats. And then with the bots, oh gosh, I would go crazy, even with my old Black Swan, in a competitive tier 1 environment with bots. That was what it's just. I think it's just a confession of wargaming that they are not getting new players in. So they're having to fill it with bots. It's like during the COVID scare, and let's just put mannequins or what do you call those, paper mache people?
Right.
That's just what the bots are. They're just like pretend players. Let's pretend that's anyway.
Yeah, so if I have it correctly, Flamu mentioned you on stream about that, right?
I don't know if he ever mentioned me on a stream. It was just in the course of a Reddit conversation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Back
So
and
no,
forth on
I
Reddit.
mean,
Okay.
yeah. So anyway, but those were the days.
So let me ask you this. We do a segment on our podcast towards the end of every episode where we ask people, if they were able to get into the wargaming offices, you can get in there, you have access to the computer, you have the ability to do one thing and one thing only. You can completely remove any ship from the game forever. Not a ship class. You can't bring a ship back. I'm sorry, you can't bring your Black Swan back, but you could sink one ship in the game. Which one would it be for Lala?
Okay, so now you've asked the question that's going to bring about a lot of dead time. I don't.
I have a delete button for that. Don't worry.
Well, that's good. But, I might have would have said the Eerie, but then the Eerie was my challenge. That's the one thing when the Swan was up against the Eerie. I had to find a way to get that Eerie within about 1.5 kilometers of me. I had to find a way to get it at almost 90 degrees to my gun barrel for me to have a hope of citadaling an Eerie. Because that was the kryptonite of the Swan. But I wouldn't want to delete the boat because it was a challenge. I had accomplished something when I had sunk the battleship of Tier 1. So I don't know what to tell you guys.
Wow, you're gonna save your answer, keep it in reserve for later.
No,
Huh?
if I had access to the servers or everything like that, I would go. Hey, something's wrong here because I'm not a hacker and I've got access to pick things up here and up your game. But I don't really have a boat.
This is an imaginative exercise. This is purely for entertainment. Zero consequences or repercussions will come of this. So if I were to just say to you, for example, because I desperately want to hear this. You pop into your boat, you pop into Black Swan back in the day when Black Swan was king, before Wargaming dressed up a goose and tried to tell you it was a swan. What's a boat that you pop into battle, you see it and you go, God, I wish that boat didn't exist? Is it the Eerie? Is it your arch nemesis? Is it Borla's Mikasa? Because you go, God damn it, I can't get near that thing. It's just going to shoot me down with secondaries. What is the boat that you absolutely hated running into?
The boat. In Tier 1, there were a lot of swans that weren't very successful. Okay? I was in a boat, a Black Swan, that was successful. In Tier 1, it was not just the boat, it was the driver, and I knew all the drivers. There was this guy named, I don't even know if he's still around. I think he went to Warplanes. Obama Jive was his name. And when Obama Jive was against me in his Orlan, oh my gosh, there's nothing, either an Eerie or 3 Eries on the opposing team, or an Orlan or 2 with a good driver, because they knew when they saw me, they just drove away. And there was just nothing nastier than Obama Jive in his Orlan shaking his rear end at me.
Sounds to me like the Orlan might be the sacrificial goose here.
Sense, because Orlan's just so blooming diminutive, so hard to hit. And even at close range, they were just like, I don't know, crazy Russians. It was more submarine than boat. There's hardly anything above water. So we'll give you an Orlan with a good driver. How's that?
Copy that.
Very good.
We got him. We got him to take one down. Took us a minute, but well,
and for the record, Obama Jive, he had I think 10,000 games in that, so he was well practiced too.
Yeah, the people there, they loved their boats, but most of their boats didn't change, so they still, and I'd almost go back to my Orlan, but I would mess up the stats, because if you ever saw my Orlan stats, that was an Orlan that faced Tier 2 when Tier 1 was part of the greater, and so and I thought, I don't want to, I'm just going to let those stats kind of sit there and be what they are for that very long time ago.
Fair enough, man.
Very good.
Well, and I've had a few old games. I call them nostalgia time, in my early days in my Orlan and such like that, facing Tier 2s, just as a matter of course, not as a failed division, but when Tier 1 was, the Orlan was 9,000 instead of 4,500, when its shells did full damage instead of half damage, all that kind of mess. So,
right.
Anyway.
Well, we really appreciate your time, Lala. Thank you very much for coming on and telling us your story. We've been looking for somebody who was passionate about those low tiers, and that you definitely fit the bill. It was enjoyable talking to you.
Absolutely passionate about that.
Well, so what we'll do here is, for all of you listening, what we're going to do is we're going to include in the link in the description, include a link in the description down below to anything that Lala would like to share with you, if it's a couple of his videos or his YouTube channel or what have you. If you're interested in what the Black Swan used to be, and you're interested in kind of getting an idea of, how to play a little bit more at Tier 1, just because, man, it's actually pretty fun going back. There's a reason why Borla and I both really like the Mikasa. And even more than that, it's embarrassing on stream when I'm forced to play a low-tier boat by one of my viewers earning some channel points and then forcing a low-tier boat. I have no idea what I'm doing. And it's so funny to me that, I could post up a great game in any number of tier 10s and then get down to tier 1 and go, what in the hell just happened to me? I have no idea what just happened because I don't know these boats and I don't know how to play them.
Right.
So,
Boggzy, can I'll just do a little, Nick Rendleton would call this a little humble brag.
Sure.
So I recently procured the Abreu.
Oh,
through
the Almirante
Hook and by
Abreu.
Crook. Yes. Which it's a very rare tier 2. And I decided for fun that I would play it the 20 times to make the leaderboard.
Oh, God.
And I have the #1 PR. I have the #1 damage. And I couldn't carry a game. Like, I would challenge somebody who hasn't played low tier to go down in a tier 2 cruiser, not a V25 or a Mikasa. Go down in a tier 2 cruiser if you're not used to it and try to carry a game. And not saying, you can't do it at times, but it's with the bots and with human players who have 6, 7, 8, 10,000 games of practice like Lala. It will be a bigger challenge than you think. My win rate in that thing is absolutely horrid.
38.1 win rate.
Yeah, I was not going to say it aloud.
But you have the top. You have the top PR and
top PR, top damage.
Yeah,
I'm within 0.05 of top frags. But the win rate is
you can't
awful
carry because
I played it solo. I played it solo
Sure,
mostly.
right.
So, but it's hilarious.
So funny.
I would challenge any of you. Most of our listeners are somewhat competitive, play clam bells or cods. Like, I would challenge you, go dig out a tier 2 boat. I didn't have a high point captain for it because I didn't have any high point Brazilian captains.
Right.
And go unleash yourself with a 7 or 10 point captain and see what you do.
I want to point out, by the way, that just because we're talking about the leaderboard for the Almirante Abreu, which is a boat. It's an extraordinarily rare boat, which is only able to be obtained when the community manager for Latin America, his name is Mare Draco, he can give out codes for it specifically. Only he can. I was gifted some of those codes to give out to my community, and I gave one. I didn't ask how you got your Almirante Abreu, Borla, but I'll just say that as a big thank you for being a great co-host and caring about this podcast, I gifted one to Borla. The top win rate players are Popeye TV, who is a community contributor for Brazil. He has an 86.36% win rate in it. And the second highest win rate is Mare Draco, who has an 83% win rate. Mare Draco himself. So it's a rare boat. If you ever find yourself with a chance to grab one or enter a contest for one, go get it, because it's one of the rarest ones out there. But yeah, I guess we should wrap up here. We'll include any links that Lala would like and down below. And I encourage you all to remember what it's like to play Warships A without CVs, but also the way that you did when you first started playing the game, which was down at the low tiers. Go have some fun and realize, really take an effort to go, how do I play these boats? What's the power levels of these boats comparatively? So you might just remember what was fun about this game if you're frustrated or burnt out. So
I used to I had a little SIG on the bottom, and it just said, "What can you do when this is all you got?" And it was just the front end, the two front turrets of my boat, and that was my SIG for years. Just bring it with just the basics.
Sure, makes sense to me, man.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here, Lala.
Thank you all.
Yep, and as always, we'll be back probably next week with another episode. We like doing this for you. We appreciate every single one of you who tunes in to listen to us. We also really appreciate, this happens a lot more, but a lot of times in games now, people will say, hey, thank you for making the podcast. It's a lot of fun. And that means an enormous amount to us, because
Yeah,
otherwise,
Boggzy, I had a guy this past week I think I shared with you, and I'll give a shout out to Shiny Trash Can
oh yeah, shiny
from
trash.
TIMT. I rarely play CV, but I was playing a CV game, and he was in a destroyer. Immediately when we dropped into game and all chat, there's a message. If you come after me, CV, I will stop listening to the podcast. And I thought that was hilarious. I thought that was a great
That's
troll on his
fantastic.
part. So
Yeah.
yeah, that stuff's fun.
Shiny Trash Can, we hear you, we see you, brother. Thank you for listening. Other than that, guys, that'll be it. Thank you, Lala. Thank you, Borla. And thank you all for listening. We'll be back next week with who the hell knows? We'll find something fun else for you guys to listen to and be entertained by. Until then, you've been listening to Get to Know World of Warships.